The room was cold, not from the air conditioning, but from how quickly the laughter had drained the warmth from her face. Maria stood at the back holding a silver tray with coffee and croissants. She wasn't supposed to listen. She knew that. But when the CFO mispronounced a key city in their South American expansion pitch for the fourth time, she couldn't help it. Quietly, she said, "That port shuts down every monsoon season. Ships reroute for weeks." Every executive turned, a beat of silence. Then laughter. "Stick to polishing glasses, sweetheart," the CFO said, still chuckling. She was escorted out like she had dropped the tray instead of dropping the truth. That night, Maria cried behind the laundry bins. But she also pulled out a notebook and started drawing something no one expected of her, a blueprint for her future. What she builds will change an entire industry, but what happens in the end will break every expectation you have. The morning air carried the scent of hotel-grade polish and citrus cleaner. Maria's sneakers made barely a sound as she moved down the hallway of the 21st floor, balancing a silver tray with white porcelain cups and a pitcher of fresh coffee. Her uniform-starched collar navy apron hair pulled into a tight bun was designed to blend her into the background. And for the most part, it worked. No one ever noticed Maria. Not the influencers who requested extra towels with one-word texts, not the middle managers barking into Bluetooth headsets, certainly not the executives in the penthouse boardroom, the ones she was now approaching tray in hand for their 10 a.m. meeting. She knocked gently before pushing the door open. The room was glass-walled, overlooking the skyline. A dozen people sat around a marble table, suits, laptops, double espressos. On the far end, next to the massive floor-to-ceiling window, sat the CFO, a man with slicked-back hair, a watch that screamed six figures, and a voice that filled the room like it paid rent. "We've got to move on this Rio expansion. South America's hot right now. If we stall, we lose the market." Maria walked quietly to the credenza. She began placing the cups, careful not to make noise. But her ears stayed open. "We already purchased land near Porto Marano," another voice said. Maria paused. It was like hearing someone say they were building a ski resort in the middle of the desert. She turned slightly. "Excuse me, sir, did you say Porto Marano?" 12 heads turned. It was like a glitch in the Matrix. Maria immediately felt the heat creep up her neck. She hadn't meant to speak, but now they were all staring. The CFO raised an eyebrow. "You know the area." She swallowed. "Yes. I was born 20 minutes from there. My father worked in real estate development." He smirked. "Well, how lucky for us." There was a beat. Maria hesitated but continued. "That port, Porto Marano, shuts down during the monsoon season. Every year. Floods block inland transport routes for weeks. Local logistics are unstable. If you build there, you won't have a working supply chain half the year." A pause. And then it came. Laughter. Short. Cutting. "Stick to polishing glasses, sweetheart," the CFO said, reaching for his coffee without looking at her. Maria stood still. One of the assistants gently ushered her out of the room, whispering apologies she didn't mean. In the hallway, the silver tray trembled slightly in her hands. That night, Maria sat behind the laundry bins, the smell of detergent strong around her. She didn't cry right away. She just stared at her reflection in the back of a chrome housekeeping cart, her lips pressed tightly together, her fingers still holding a mug she forgot to return. Then the tears came hot, fast, and quiet. She remembered her father. Tanned skin, calloused hands, teaching her how to read land deeds on the kitchen floor. "You know what's more powerful than money, mihija," he'd say. Knowing what they don't. She still had his old real estate books. She still remembered his lessons. So why did it still feel like her voice didn't matter? The next day she called out sick. She didn't want to see the CFO again. She didn't want to walk past the boardroom. Instead, she opened her father's worn copy of Emerging Markets, South America's Sleeping Giants, and began reading like her life depended on it. Over the next week, Maria kept working, but something had shifted. She started waking up earlier, 4:30 instead of 6. Before her shift, she sat in the back corner of a 24-hour diner with a second-hand laptop and a pair of old headphones. She downloaded business podcasts, subscribed to real estate newsletters, jotted terms into a notebook with pages already curling from use. Her manager at the hotel, Lena, noticed the change. "Maria, you okay?" she asked one afternoon in the supply closet. "You seem Somewhere else lately. Maria smiled faintly. I think I am. Lena raised an eyebrow. Meaning? I'm thinking about taking some night classes, maybe in economics or property development. Lena paused. Then she shrugged. Well, just don't forget us when you're rich and famous. Maria chuckled. I promise. But deep down, she didn't believe it. Not yet. 2 weeks later, Maria stood in line at the community college registrar's office, clutching a worn backpack. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead. A man behind her coughed. A student in front argued with someone on the phone. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't anything like the glass boardroom upstairs, but it was hers. She signed up for 2 night classes, Principles of Microeconomics and Real Estate Investment Basics. She used most of her savings for the deposit. When she walked out, the weight of her backpack felt lighter than it should have. Maybe it was hope? Maria's days blurred into double shifts and late-night homework. She cleaned sweets by day and took notes under flickering lecture hall lights by night. Her fingers were often raw from chemicals. Her feet ached. Her eyes stung from fatigue. But her mind was on fire. Each class unlocked a memory of her father. Each podcast made her feel less like a maid pretending to understand and more like someone who already did. One night, after finishing a group assignment, she found a message on her laptop. Hey, you're the girl from Mendoza, right? That port city. It was from Noah, a soft-spoken man from her night class. He had kind eyes and always offered to carry her bag. They'd exchanged small talk, but nothing more. Yeah, she typed back. Porto Morano. Why? Your analysis in class was spot on. I used to work in customs. You knew things most consultants don't. Maria stared at the screen. Then she smiled. Maybe she wasn't invisible after all. Maria's days settled into a rhythm that was equal parts exhausting and electrifying. Wake before dawn. Lace her worn sneakers. Clean 15 rooms. Take a quick nap. Then race to class by 6:00 p.m. Always sitting near the back notebook, ready eyes wide. She didn't speak much, at least not in the beginning, but slowly the silence she'd worn like armor began to peel away. It started with group projects, then occasional study sessions, and then almost unexpectedly with Noah. Noah was 32, a former logistics coordinator for an export firm recently laid off and trying to pivot into consulting. He wasn't flashy. He spoke softly, listened closely, and never interrupted. He also never once looked at Maria like she didn't belong. They began studying together after class, first at the campus library, then sometimes over greasy fries at the all-night diner near the station. You ever think about what you'd name your own company? He asked her one night, unprompted. She looked up from her notes. That's a weird question. I know, he said, smiling, but I think about it all the time. Like if you put your name on a building, what would it say? She tapped her pen on her chin. My father used to sign everything with just his initials, VM. So, VM Consulting. She shook her head. Too cold. Too safe. And then, almost without thinking, she said, maybe Maria Vey Group. Something small, but meaningful. Noah leaned back. I like it. She liked that he liked it. Back at the hotel, things had started to shift. Lena, the supervisor, began noticing how Maria spoke with more authority. When a junior maid misplaced a guest's diamond bracelet, it was Maria who diffused the situation with grace, reminding the guest of their safe policy and gently guiding the newer staff through proper protocol. You ever thought about applying for front desk? Lena asked during a break. Maria paused. I've thought about a lot of things. Still, she didn't apply. Not because she didn't want to move forward, but because in her mind, her next step wasn't in that hotel. It was outside of it entirely. That December, with a thin stack of case studies and a pitch deck she worked on at night, Maria entered a local business grant competition aimed at first-generation immigrants starting small consultancies. Noah helped design her slide template. You're really doing this, he said, printing the final draft at the campus lab. Maria exhaled. I think I am. The pitch day came. Held in a refurbished warehouse, the air inside buzzed with nervous energy. Aspiring entrepreneurs paced the halls, clutching laptops and coffee, rehearsing talking points under their breath. Maria wore a blouse she'd borrowed from Lena and pressed herself. Her hair was down for the first time in months, curled softly at the edges. Her hands trembled as she clicked through the slides. She spoke about overlooked regions, about logistics bottlenecks no one budgeted for, about her father's lost project, and how better insight could have saved him and hundreds of others from ruin. And I know what it feels like. She ended, her voice steady, to be in a room and not be heard. I've built this firm for those voices. There was silence, then applause. A week later, she was awarded second place and a $15,000 seed grant. She didn't go back to cleaning rooms. With the grant money and a borrowed desk in Noah's cousin's accounting office, she launched Maria V Group, a micro-consulting firm specializing in real estate risk mapping and regional feasibility reports. She printed business cards, built a simple website, took on her first client, a small, scrappy construction startup looking to expand into Paraguay. And she was good, better than even she expected, because she didn't just know the maps and markets. She understood people. She could walk a dirt road in a forgotten suburb and tell you how the rainwater would pool, how the trucks would sink, how the locals would react. By year 2, she had 6 clients. By year 4, she had an assistant. Noah eventually came on board part-time at first, then full-time as their contracts began drawing interest from mid-sized developers. They worked late most nights, their desks angled toward one another, cups of take-out coffee littering the space between them. But something had shifted. Noah's smiles had become less playful, more searching. He lingered after conversations. One evening, as they were leaving a client meeting, he reached for her hand instinctively as they crossed a busy street. She didn't pull away. At the curb, he paused. "Maria," he said. She looked up, heart thudding in her chest. But before he could speak, her phone rang an unknown number. She answered, expecting a vendor or scheduling issue. Instead, a deep voice said, "We were referred to your firm by a contact in São Paulo. We're with the Aurora International Hotel Group. We'd like to schedule a call." After she hung up, she stood frozen. Noah tilted his head. "Everything okay?" "It's them," she said quietly. "Who?" "The hotel," she whispered. "The one I used to clean." He blinked. "They want to work with you." She nodded slowly. "They don't know it's me." "Not yet." A beat passed. Then softly he asked, "What are you going to do?" Maria looked across the street toward the future she'd built brick by invisible brick. "I'm going to take the meeting." The call took place over Zoom. 2 regional development managers, one visibly younger, the other stern with eyes that scanned like X-rays. They wanted help restructuring a Latin American expansion. Their recent launch in Colombia had tanked after a PR crisis involving environmental regulations and a local labor strike. Maria listened quietly. Then she asked one question: "Why Porto Marano?" The men exchanged glances. "How did you—" "I know the region," she said. 3 days later, they asked for a full proposal. She gave them one tight, clear, uncompromising. And then she waited. The callback came with an offer and a surprise. The project was being reassigned to a new committee, Senior Oversight, headed by the CFO, the same man who'd laughed at her, the same man who had told her to stick to polishing glasses. He had no idea she was the girl in the apron. Yet, Maria stood in front of her closet fingers, brushing past suits and blouses until she stopped at a navy blazer she'd worn to her first client pitch years ago. The same one Noah had said made her look dangerously prepared. She smiled faintly, remembering the moment. But now her reflection looked different. Stronger jawline, clearer eyes. A woman who hadn't just built a company but built herself. The proposal had been accepted. Aurora International wanted her to fly out to oversee their failing Latin American division and advise a possible relaunch of their Porto Marano site. But there was a condition. All consultants will be expected to attend the Strategy Summit in New York, the email read. Senior leadership will be present. The boardroom. The one. Noah watched her read it. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she said too fast, then paused. "Actually, I don't know." He stepped closer. "You don't have to go." "I do," she said softly but firmly. "I've waited too long to stay invisible." On the flight to New York, Maria stared out the window as the clouds shifted like white tides beneath her. She thought about her father, how he used to dream of one day walking into buildings he helped design. He never got that chance, but she would. When the wheels touched down, she felt more than just jet lag. She felt history rising through her spine. The summit took place at Aurora's Midtown headquarters, an opulent tower of glass and steel. She recognized the marble floors, the muted gold lighting, the same floral scent pumped through the air vents that she used to clean around without thinking. She was no longer a maid with a tray. She was listed on the itinerary. Maria Simi, lead regional consultant, Latin markets. A staff assistant offered her water. Someone asked if she needed anything from IT. A junior analyst complimented her firm's latest white paper. Still, Maria couldn't fully shake the tension beneath her skin. The ghosts of her past life still lingered here. She stepped into the boardroom. It was smaller than she remembered, less imposing. Or maybe she had grown. The CFO hadn't arrived yet. She took her seat, laying out a crisp folder with her name printed on the front. As others trickled in, some nodded politely, unaware of her significance. Some looked curious. Who was this outsider with such confident posture? And then he walked in, CFO Richard Kearns. Still the same glinting watch, still the same smirk. Time had added only faint creases to his face. He scanned the room, nodding at executives, then paused when he saw her. Their eyes locked. A flicker of recognition. No, just brief curiosity. He didn't know? Not yet. Let's begin, he said, tapping his pen. Maria V. You've got the floor. Maria rose, steadying her breath. Her presentation was crisp, layered, brutally honest. She outlined the flaws in their logistics plan, the community missteps, the zoning oversights, and how the previous expansion failed because it didn't include local voices. They didn't need a luxury tower, she said, meeting his gaze. They needed dignity. Silence. Someone cleared their throat. And then, unexpectedly, applause. Slow, then growing. Kearns shifted in his chair. You seem familiar. Maria gave a faint smile. I should. I'm sorry. We met years ago. You told me to stick to polishing glasses. The room went still. Kearns blinked. She could see it, the slow click of memory, the sting of embarrassment behind his eyes. But she didn't wait. I took that advice, she said. I polished everything until I could see my reflection clearly, and then I started polishing the cracks in your strategy. The room remained silent. No smug laughs now. Just the quiet recalibration of power. Later that night, Maria sat with Noah on the rooftop of their hotel, a blanket draped around her shoulders. The air smelled like city rain and metal. You did it, he said gently. She nodded. I did. But her mind wasn't celebrating. It was circling. I think Kearns recognized me. Fully, she whispered. He deserved to. Noah replied. I don't want revenge, she said. I want change. And maybe, he said, you want closure. She turned to him, hesitating. I don't know how to feel around you lately, she said. I mean, I've leaned on you so much. He didn't flinch. Maria, you don't owe me anything. I didn't say I owed you, she said quietly. I said I'm scared that if this becomes something more, I'll lose the only person who ever saw me clearly. Noah was quiet for a moment. Then I'm not here for a spotlight. I'm here for you, even if you can't say yes yet. She looked at him, and for the first time in years allowed herself to believe she could be loved for who she was, now, not who she had been. 2 months later, Maria V Group landed 3 new clients, 2 from referrals after the summit, and 1 from an unexpected source, an Aurora board member who requested a private follow-up meeting. There's talk of a rebranding, the member had said. Something symbolic. And some of us think naming the new flagship in Porto Murano after someone who actually understands the region would send the right message. Maria froze. You're serious? He nodded. If you're willing. We're voting next quarter. She left the meeting stunned, then spent the entire cab ride replaying the moment in her head. It wasn't about vanity. It was about every invisible worker who had ever been laughed out of a room. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just smiled softly and kept working. One morning, she walked past a hotel lobby in Buenos Aires while heading to a client meeting. A maid was standing behind the desk, listening intently to a conversation between 2 guests. The woman hesitated, then offered a gentle suggestion about a tour route. The guest laughed politely and turned away. Maria didn't intervene, but she walked back a moment later and handed the maid her card. If anyone tells you to stick to polishing glasses, she said, tell them your name's going on a building one day. The next quarter came quickly. Maria received the formal invitation with a smooth envelope and an embossed header, Aurora International Executive Naming Committee Summit, Latin Division Strategy Review. The event would be held at the original luxury hotel where she had once cleaned rooms, the same building, same boardroom. As she stared at the invitation, the corners of her mouth tightened. It was the place where she'd first been told she didn't belong. Now her name was being considered to be engraved on one of its buildings. Still, a part of her hesitated. "You don't have to go," Noah said again, watching her from the doorway. "It doesn't make you more or less worthy." Maria exhaled, then slowly folded the letter and placed it into her travel binder. "I know, but I want to go. Not for them. For the girl I used to be." The hotel lobby hadn't changed. Still, the same polished floors, giant floral arrangements, and chandeliers that flickered slightly with every gust from the revolving doors. The staff wore the same uniforms she once did. She noticed one maid adjusting her collar in the mirror, trying to look smaller, invisible. Maria paused for a moment before heading to the elevators. When the doors slid open, a young bellhop offered to press the floor. "Executive boardroom?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. She caught her reflection in the mirrored doors. Tailored navy suit, small gold earrings, soft waves in her hair. She looked like every consultant who had once ignored her, only different. She had lived both lives. Inside the boardroom, the conversation buzzed with anticipation. Board members, branding consultants, and international PR reps gathered around a long table with digital screens displaying building renderings and rebranding concepts. Maria took her assigned seat this time with a printed placard that read, "Miss Maria Valentina Moreno founder, Maria Beat Group." At the head of the table, Richard Kearns entered with the same clipped gait. He glanced her way this time with recognition layered in something else. Not warmth, not remorse, control. He cleared his throat and began the meeting. "We're considering 4 renaming options for the Porto Murano property," he announced, clicking through a deck. 3 regionally inspired names and 1 symbolic proposal. A slide appeared. "The Maria the Hotel, a tribute to voices that rise from the ground up." A few heads nodded. One board member glanced at Maria. "She's not just a consultant," the member said. "She's a success story born of the region." The brand would resonate deeply. Kearns remained silent. Maria could feel the calculation behind his eyes. She knew that look. The same one he gave her when she was just a maid daring to speak. After some back and forth, he finally spoke. "With all respect, the optics might backfire. We don't typically name properties after non-executives." Maria leaned forward, voice calm but firm. "You mean people who don't start out in boardrooms?" A pause. "I mean," Kearns said coolly, "we need to be cautious. We can't rebrand around a narrative of victimhood." Maria blinked slowly. "I never asked to be a victim. I asked to be heard." The room grew quiet. A younger board member cleared his throat. "Let's not confuse humility with insignificance. Ms. Moreno's insight saved our project." Kearns exhaled, barely hiding his irritation. "Let's take a vote." Voting was anonymous. Each member typed their preference into a digital tablet. Maria felt her palms sweat as she pressed her fingers together. She wasn't allowed to vote. She wasn't even technically on the committee, just an advisory guest. But this moment held the weight of 1,000 late-night studying sessions, every room she cleaned, every joke she endured silently, every word she swallowed. The votes were cast. Kearns read them aloud. Option 1, 3 votes. Option 2, 1 vote. Option 3, 2 votes. Option 4, the Maria fee. Hotel 6 votes. Silence. Maria couldn't read Kearns's face, but she could feel the shift in the room. Not one of celebration, but of quiet inevitability. She hadn't demanded this honor. She had earned it. Later after the meeting, Kearns approached her in the hallway. He adjusted his cufflinks. "You played your cards well." Maria smiled. "This wasn't a game." He tilted his head. "So, how does it feel?" She looked past him toward the window where the skyline bled into early evening light. "It feels overdue," she said, "and still, not enough." He blinked. "Not enough. I'm not here for a nameplate," she said. "I'm here to change the way you listen to people." "You think a building can do that?" "No," she replied, "but a woman behind it can." He said nothing more. She walked past him, heels clicking softly across the polished tile. Back in her hotel room, Maria called Noah. "They voted for it," she said. "He didn't say 'I told you so' or 'of course they did.' Instead, he said, 'So what now?'" Maria sat by the window watching taxis crawl below like lazy ants. I want to go back home, she said, to the real Porto Marano, before the ribbon cutting, before the press. I'll go with you, he said quietly. A pause. I'd like that. Porto Marano smelled like earth and salt water. The streets were cracked but familiar. Children played barefoot soccer near a rusted goalpost. Women hung laundry over shared wires strung between faded apartment balconies. Maria walked the old path her father used to take when he worked on his last project. She stopped in front of the vacant lot where his final blueprint had lived and died. Noah stood beside her silent. I used to think success was getting out of here, she said, but maybe part of it is coming back. She took out a folded piece of paper. Her father's last letter to her, creased and yellowing. Mihija, it read, "If they don't listen to your voice, teach them your silence can shake walls." She looked up at the sky. I wish he could see it, she whispered. Noah gently took her hand. Maybe he can. When they returned to the city, Maria reviewed the final branding packet logos, design assets, and exterior signage specs. Right on the cover, the Maria Fey Hotel, rooted in respect. Designed for the future. The grand opening of the Maria First Hotel in Porto Marano was scheduled for early spring. Invitations were sent to international developers, investors, regional journalists, and several former Aurora International board members, including Richard Kearns. Maria reviewed the guest list once, then again, eyes pausing on his name. She didn't feel anger, just distance. He was part of a story she had outgrown. On the morning of the launch, the sky above Porto Marano glowed in soft shades of rose and copper. The air was thick with humidity, but carried the scent of jasmine and sea breeze. A small string quartet tuned their instruments near the stage. Staff moved like clockwork, rehearsing tray movements, checking name tags, fluffing cushions. Maria stood behind the large double doors of the hotel's main entrance, a mic clipped discreetly to her blazer, her palms slightly damp. She hadn't prepared a speech, she just wanted to speak the truth. Noah approached from behind. "You good?" She turned, nervous. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be you." She smiled. A simple truth, but one she had spent years earning. When the doors opened, the crowd stepped into a building shaped by her father's blueprints, her sweat and her vision. The lobby glowed in warm golden tones with handmade tile from local artisans, sustainable materials, and even a discreet display near the entrance, a framed plaque reading, "Dedicated to the quiet ones who saw what others missed." A hush fell as she stepped up to the podium. She looked at the faces before her, wealthy developers in linen suits, local officials in borrowed ties, regional architects with notepads in hand. But her gaze stopped on the cleaning staff standing at the back. They were the only ones not holding phones. They were just listening, she began. "I wasn't supposed to be in rooms like this," she said softly. "Not with microphones, not with suits." A faint chuckle rippled through the crowd. "I started here. Not here in this building, but here in the dirt, in the heat. I watched my father lose everything because no one wanted to listen to someone who looked like us." She let that hang. "But today, I'm not here to retell a sob story." She leaned forward slightly. "I'm here to tell you what happens when people who were laughed at build something stronger than the ones who laughed." No applause, just silence. And for Maria, that silence said more than clapping ever could. After the ceremony, a woman from the cleaning staff approached her cautiously. She was no older than 20, with a name tag that read Estella and a small braid curling down her back. "Ma'am," she began, "I just wanted to say thank you." Maria looked her in the eyes. "You have a name. Use it." The girl smiled, startled. "Thank you, Estella." "No," Maria said warmly. "I thank you, Estella." She handed her a card. "If anyone tries to shut your voice down, call me. I'll help you find it again." Estella nodded, eyes glossy. She wasn't just looking at a boss. She was looking at a future. That evening, after the crowd cleared, Maria and Noah stood in the now quiet lobby. Soft jazz played from recessed speakers. The lights dimmed to a warm honey hue. Noah broke the silence. "It's beautiful. It's more than I dreamed," Maria admitted, "and yet it doesn't feel like an ending." "It isn't." He stepped closer. "Maria, I've waited to say this until it didn't feel like I was trying to win anything. But I love you." She looked at him. no fear in her eyes, no retreat. I love you too. He smiled a little stunned. I mean it, she said. You were the only person who saw the real me before I even knew who that was. They stood in silence for a beat. Then he reached out and gently pressed his forehead to hers. They didn't kiss. Not yet. Some things like justice and love deserve to unfold slowly. A month later, a regional magazine ran a cover story from Maid to Mogul, the woman behind the walls of Maria 5. The article went viral, but Maria didn't read the comments. She was too busy hiring new analysts for her next round of expansion, this time in Southeast Asia. And just as she was finalizing the project, she received a letter, handwritten, from Richard Kearns. He had resigned from the board. The letter was short, just one sentence. You were right. Maria folded it once and tucked it into her father's old notebook. Then she got back to work. On the first anniversary of the hotel opening, a small ceremony was held for staff only. No cameras, no press. Maria stood beside Estella, who was now a junior operations coordinator. They unveiled a small bronze statue at the rear of the property, just beside the employee entrance. It was of a woman head held high, one hand clutching a tray, the other holding blueprints rolled under her arm. Beneath it, a quote, "If they laugh, let them. You're just getting started." We often underestimate the power of the quiet ones, the ones who listen, who learn, who build in silence while the world mocks them. But in the end, they're the ones who rise and remind us that dignity doesn't need permission to enter a room. Have you ever been dismissed for simply speaking up, or known someone who changed their life by refusing to stay small? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved, you don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for staying till the end. We'll see you in the next one.